All right, there we go. We heard from the new Jazz man, and we have the Jazz expert with us, Spence Checketts. You can hear him, by the way, Reality Check. The podcast is marvelous.
Thank you.
You're doing it out of Utah now. So
yeah, we're right downtown Salt Lake City.
I love that. And anywhere you get your podcast, look up Reality Check. It's a lot of fun. So, wow, what a crazy offseason. And not just in Utah. You know, it's funny. We were all excited about what the Jazz had done, and then everybody else started doing this thing. And to some national experts, they've become an afterthought. But let's take a look now, Spence, as you break this down. First of all, the Jazz additions. The primary additions, of course. As you look at this list, there's got to be a number of things that excite you, certainly the name at the top.
Yeah, I mean, the Jazz have fundamentally changed who they are as a basketball team. Now, we'll have to wait and see exactly how Quinn Snyder decides to go with his rotations, who starts, who finishes. But, you know, that's kind of secondary to the roster building that's taken place. The Jazz have gone from a dominant defensive basketball team, like a take the air out of the basketball, running football type team, to a team that has a chance to be a top 5 elite offensive team with the additions of Mike Conley and Bojan Bogdanovic specifically. Now, Ed Davis, Jeff Green gives them depth up front. They're going to need it because they're going to miss Derek Favors. We're going to talk about Emmanuel Mudiay, who I think is kind of a bit piece. I've never really loved him. But you have an all-star caliber player, albeit a guy who's never made an all-star team in Mike Conley, and a 30-year-old small forward / power forward that was one of the top 5 shooters in all of the NBA last year. So the Jazz still have a chance to be dominant defensively, but they also have a chance to be a top 3 or 5 offensive rated basketball team, which you have to be if you want to win championships.
Now, of course, to add all that, you have to subtract a number of pieces. And as we take a look at that, anything that concerns you, and as you look at this list, by the way, this doesn't even include Efe Udoh, who's now going to play overseas.
Right.
But there are the bodies that have left.
Well, here's the thing. The Jazz will miss Derek Favors, okay? And the Jazz are a different team defensively. Ricky Rubio, for all of his shortcomings on offense, is a big, long defensive guard who oftentimes drew the assignment of James Harden in the Houston series last year. Jay Crowder is the type of guy who can guard a LeBron James and make him uncomfortable, or a Kevin Durant, or a big wing, or a guy like that. Kyle Korver, great shooter, locker room presence. And then the other bit pieces, Grayson and Neto, they just add some depth. But I think the Jazz, the question mark, ironically, Dave, for the Jazz now is, do they have enough toughness up front?
Right.
And because without Favors and Crowder. Okay, remember, Crowder, physical defender. Okay, so you add Jeff Green, who historically speaking is a wing with some size that can shoot it a little bit, doesn't have the physicality of Crowder. You add Ed Davis, who's not near the player of Derek Favors, although I like Ed Davis. But if the Jazz have an injury to a big man up front, they're going to be in some trouble. So while everyone's excited about the additions, and they should be, the Jazz are really going to miss Derek Favors and Jay Crowder.
By the way, I loved what Dwayne Wade had tweeted about Jeff Green, about how this guy he's a great locker room guy. He works hard. He could shoot the ball. And here we are, 3 years in a row, he signs a 1-year deal.
Right.
I mean, he loves it.
I will tell you what, though. I spoke with a scout from the Wizards. The Wizards wanted him back. And the text that the scout sent me was, I'm really happy for Jeff because now at this point in his career, he's ring chasing. Ring chasing in Salt Lake City.
To the Jazz.
Ring chasing in Salt Lake City. It's never happened before. And people around the league are talking about it. It's pretty cool.
Wow, that is cool. Yeah. All right, let's break down these guys specifically. And I know you love Conley.
Yeah.
What does Conley bring to this team? And certainly Bogdanovich as well. And I assume they're both going to be starting.
So, you know, it's an interesting question. I think they're both going to start for sure. But a lot of people have kind of pontificated of the possibility of Jeff Green starting alongside Rudy. If my best guess is Quinn is going to start Joe Ingles and Bogdanovich at the forward position, and then start Conley alongside Donovan, and of course Rudy at center. So Jazz fans, you're going to love both these guys. Ironically enough, I know Jazz fans aren't going to want to hear this. Bogdanovich plays a little bit like Gordon Hayward. Bogdanovich is going to remind you a little bit of Gordon.
Well, I think the Jazz liked him when he was.
But you know, Jazz fans hate Gordon and all that stuff. So he's a better pure shooter than Gordon, but he's actually pretty good off the dribble, and he can attack the basket a little bit. Like, he's a playmaker. He's not just a standstill shooter. And Mike Conley, you put a dynamic guard next to Donovan, a guy who can make plays, who can make shots. He was a defensive specialist. He's used to playing in front of Marc Gasol, who's a defensive player of the year at one point. And the Jazz have a 2-time defensive player of the year. Everything Conley does fits in well with the Quinn Snyder system. He's already on the ground. He's working out with Donovan. He's in Vegas for Summer League. And he's excited to be here. He's a pro. And Bogdanovich, albeit 30 years old. Look, 4 years, $72 million for a 30-year-old is a lot. It's a lot of change. Okay, and in 2 or 3 years, this deal could look a little, I don't know. But for now, what the Jazz have done specifically on the offensive end of the floor is really exciting. And
Conley, I would think, takes some pressure off Donovan Mitchell as well.
Yes.
The way Rubio probably couldn't.
You know, Conley was on the Woj Pod today, Adrian Wojnarowski's podcast. And he said, one of the things I really want to do for Donovan is to be able to come down and run a set and say, go rest in the corner and make a shot if I need you, as opposed to dominate the action on pick and roll and Donovan being your only primary ball handler alongside with some bit pieces. Conley can now dominate that action, make plays off the bounce, and take so much pressure off Donovan, which gives him more energy defensively and gives him more energy down the stretch, you know, during crunch time minutes.
Let's talk about the backup point guard then, because there's another issue. Neto is now gone. Obviously, Rubio, he wasn't the backup, but he's out of the picture. Exum has got to stay healthy.
Yeah,
I assume you believe that. And what does Mudiay bring to the team?
So, I remain high on Dante Exum. And at some point, I'm going to have to stop because the poor guy just can't stay healthy.
I think we all feel that way, yeah.
And there's a lot of members of the Jazz front office that still believe Dante can be very, very good. But for the last 4 years, he's played in like 20% of the games he's been available. And it's not just bit injuries. It's not a twisted knee or whatever. These are catastrophic season-ending injuries. Okay, the reason I bring this up is I've never been an Emmanuel Mudiay fan. Okay, he was drafted number 7 by Denver overall. He was supposed to go to SMU out of high school. He decommitted and actually played overseas in China, drafted by Denver. He was atrocious with the Nuggets, had a little bit better season last year with the Knicks, one of the worst teams in the NBA, but he doesn't shoot it well from the outside. He doesn't really distribute it that well. He's a decent ball handler. Here's what you love about him, okay? The fact that he's 23 years old and he's never had any consistent high-level coaching. So my guess is what Justin Zanuck and Dennis Lindsay are doing is they're betting on their head coach, Quinn Snyder.
Oh, okay, to shape him into what they need.
They're saying, okay, Mudiay, he's 23. It's a 1-year deal. It's 1.7 mil. It's not that much. We're going to trust our head coach. We're going to give him a bit of a reclamation project. And Emmanuel Mudiay knows this might be his last chance to prove he's an NBA player. So if Dante doesn't stay healthy, I'd be a little bit concerned because Conley is going to be 32 years old, and I wouldn't want to be playing Mudiay big minutes.
You know, a lot of people are probably wondering, well, why didn't we just keep Neto instead of Mudiay? But salaries have to match up to make all these things work, and it just that's the only way something like that would work.
That's correct.
All right, before we get to your top 8, the other day when we all woke up, you talk about earthquakes in Southern California. It was the Woj bomb. We've all heard that joke. Let's talk first about what has happened down there. And Kawhi Leonard, secretly, everybody thought he was this quiet guy. Behind the scenes, he's brokering a deal. Right. And now he and Paul George are Clippers.
And look, I love this story because it's just counter to what we know about NBA superstars. You know, the fanfare, the LeBron decision, the Durant to Brooklyn and Kyrie moving teams. Like, Kawhi did this behind closed doors. He was recruiting Durant, he was recruiting Kyrie, and he ended up being able to convince Paul George to go to OKC and say, trade me to the Clippers. And by the way, different topic for a different day, Oklahoma City got a myriad of assets in exchange for Paul George. So they're going to be a force to be reckoned with years down the road. They got like 6 additional draft picks. They traded Jeremy Grant today for another draft pick. But as it stands right now, the Clippers, in my estimation, have 2 of the top 4 players in the NBA next year with Kevin Durant on the sideline. Because Paul George was in the MVP conversation. Don't forget this year. He's playing that well. And then Kawhi Leonard just took a team to the NBA Finals. He was the NBA Finals MVP. So they have some work to do to fill out their roster, but I would pick the Clippers to win the title today.
And now in the same building, you have LeBron and Anthony Davis across the hall.
Right.
I mean, this is just although I think you agree that the Clippers have a much better roster than the Lakers.
I would agree with that. Now, if it was LeBron 6 years ago, I go the Lakers. LeBron's going to be 35 this year.
Yeah,
and about February, we're going to see LeBron James take his place as the 3rd player all-time in minutes played at the age of 35 because he came in so young and he was playing big minutes and also playoff runs, 9 NBA Finals, Olympic situations, you know, international duty. Like the mileage on the odometer just will not allow LeBron to be as dominant as he used to be. Having said that, he's still LeBron James. And if he can stay healthy, Anthony Davis at 26 years old is probably the most skilled big in the league. They need to fill out their roster. Actually, well, we've seen them fill out their roster, and I don't love the rest of their talent, but they do have Kyle Kuzma, Danny Green. They signed Avery Bradley today, Rajon Rondo. Like, they do have a decent bench and some decent depth. They're very top-heavy. If Kawhi went to the Lakers, Lakers are even money to win a title, let alone favorite or underdog or what have you. I'm glad Kawhi went to the Clippers, and I'm glad we have a little bit more parity because it makes things a little bit more interesting.
All right, you just talked about the Clippers being your NBA title favorite, but you think about this out west: Clippers, Lakers, Warriors. I mean, they haven't fallen off the face of the earth. Houston, Portland, Denver, Utah. Unjumble that for us. Give us Spence Checketts top 8?
It's really hard because I
it?
anticipate like 1 through 8 being separated by 3 or 4 games. Like the last few weeks of the NBA season this year, it's just going to be bananas because I love what Denver's done. Denver said we're going to run it back, and then they added Jeremy Grant from Oklahoma City. I love what Portland's done. I don't love Hassan Whiteside, but he's a placeholder for Nurkic for now. And obviously Clippers, Lakers. So look, I would just say this: the Clippers have to be the favorite in my estimation.
So they're number 1.
And I put the Jazz at 2.
Really?
Yeah, because I like the Jazz depth over the Lakers depth. And if LeBron was 28, we'd have a different conversation. It's 35. So I put the Jazz 2. I put the Lakers 3. I put Houston 4. Because I think Houston's going to look around and say, look, we were close to, if we beat the Warriors 2 years ago, then this year, maybe we win the title. The Warriors are falling off. They bring everybody back. And I know Chris Paul is on the other side of 33, 34, whatever. He doesn't look right.
So there's your top 4 home court advantage
Right,
teams.
but I still think they're going to be very, very good. At 5, I'll take Golden State. At 6, I'll take Denver. At 7, I'll take Portland. And at 8, I'm going to put New Orleans in there. But that means San Antonio falls out.
Yeah.
You know, it means Sacramento, Minnesota. It means some good teams are not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, okay.
Some really good teams aren't going to make the playoffs.
But, you know, you're right. That New Orleans, that's a sneaky good little team that Derek Favors is going to be a part of.
Right.
So. Well, this is going to be fun. And you know, you bring up the point about how important every game's going to be in those last few weeks. I think these teams got to think about the entire season.
Sure.
Because you just said it. 4 games may separate the top 4.
Right.
From day 1 to day 82.
Right.
You got to think about winning.
Some really good teams are going to be out of the playoffs, and some really good teams are going to have to hit the road to start the postseason.
Absolutely. You're the man.
Thanks, brother.
Spence Checketts, he brings it. You can also catch him on his podcast, which is Reality Check, wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks for joining us, and we'll have you in again.
You got it, man. Good to see you.
All right.
And shout out to my man Adam.
Yeah.
And Larry.
Struck. They're all over here.
Yep.
Play of the Day is coming up next.